Welcome, everybody. We had a fun little icebreaker that they had no preparation for, so not my norm, but you're in the right place if you meant to be at the webinar, Bringing the Humanities to Life, HR, and this is Lindsey Baker. I'm the CEO of Maryland Humanities. We're going to have some fun today. We're going to talk about how the humanities inform work in the HR sector. And per my conversation with Nicole last night, HR does not refer to heated rivalry, although we could talk about that, or maybe only me. Thank you, Noelle. Thank you. I've had these side conversations with the other two panelists, and they're not ready for that conversation. So, welcome. Today, we're really going to talk about things like empathy, storytelling, cultural context, historical awareness, and how those aren't really soft extras to how we do HR work. They are core to many people's HR practice, and I would propose they should be core to what everyone thinks about when they're doing HR work. That being said, I have never actually worked in a company or a nonprofit that had an HR officially, so take my opinion for what it's worth. I've always worked in organizations where I've had to lead HR policies as the executive director and now CEO. That being said, we have somebody on the panel who has that same experience as me, at least where they're at now. And then we have two HR professionals. So I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves. Samaa, because you raised your hand, you're going to be first. And for your introduction, you do not have to include what type of vegetable you would be. You can just say your name, your role and where you're at if you feel good about that. And if you want to talk about your relationships doing HR work, you can, but we're going to dig into that a lot in the questions.
Great. Thanks, Lindsay. I'm so accustomed to going first because of my last name. So accustomed. I'm Samaa Abdurraqib. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the executive director at Maine Humanities, and I've been in this role since 2022. In my time in the nonprofit world, I have never worked at a place where there was a designated HR person on staff, and we don't have one at Maine Humanities, and so a lot of my HR support comes from consultants and from board members. Um, yeah, that's that, and yeah, we'll get into it. So,
Love it. Thank you. Noelle, let's go to you next.
Hi, everyone. Noelle Johnson, she, her pronouns, and I live in the DC area. I work now at Gainsight as a talent development and inclusion partner. I've been working in the HR space. I'd say, like, I normally just say people operations, but it's really angled towards HR. But I've been working in this space for about 10 years. I love people, and that's really what drives me. And I know that we'll be getting more into that. And yeah, that I'm happy to be here with you all.
Perfect. Thank you, Noelle. Nicole.
Yeah, Nicole Hilaire. I am currently the vice president at Gainsight. Get the pleasure of working with Noelle and doing some of the good work. What my side of the house does in HR at Gainsight is kind of the things I think and that in the nonprofit world you're probably most familiar with. Um, that I've seen at least when I've talked to Lindsay or other people in the nonprofit world, which is kind of those fundamental things around the handbook, the policy, and kind of like the table stakes for an organization in HR. What I hope this conversation is we can explore the more strategic parts and the human elements, because I think that's where really HR comes to life when we bring the human element and spirit to the workplace. And that's where I think the magic happens. And that's why I've been in this career for, I don't want to age myself, but it's been a while. So I graduated law school and then I jumped right into employee and labor relations and then followed the path the whole way. So it's all I know. And I love it. Days are hard and days are really amazing. And then there's some in between.
All right. Before we get started, like I'll do a disclaimer since you all work for like a big fancy company, and Samaa is, running Maine Humanities. The opinions expressed in this webinar are yours and are not representative of your company or nonprofit or some other similar disclaimer. That sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. Love it. Nicole, we're going to stay with you. You're going to have the first question. I'm going to read it out loud, then I'll put it in the chat in case we have anyone who, like me, learns better by reading. When people think about HR, they often think about compliance benefits and hiring processes, the mechanics of managing people. But the humanities ask us to slow down and consider context, meaning, and the fullness of human experience. Where do you see that kind of thinking showing up or needing to show up in HR work?
Okay, very deep. So when I was preparing for this webinar, Noelle, I was reflecting on when Robert Smith came and did the February discussion with Gainsight, and he talked about the liberated human spirit. So if you guys don't know who Robert Smith is, we are really fortunate to be, this is not the words that are usually said, but we Vista is a private equity firm, and Gainsight has the privilege to be owned by them. They are visionaries in their space, and in one of the most amazing spaces to be visionaries is actually on the people side. You don't usually hear those words together when you hear private equity, and so we're really lucky to. I'm really lucky at my point of career to kind of be at a place that prioritizes these things. And Robert Smith is the leader, the founder of this private equity firm. It's massive. It's a very big deal in the tech space. And he is a visionary of all kinds, but even on people and culture and all things, many things. Noelle can probably wax on much better than me. And he came and did a talk at Gainsight, and he talked about how he wrote this book about community and talked about the beloved, but that creating places where the human spirit is liberated allows us to accomplish so much, right? And I know we've talked a lot about this in the inclusion space in the last 10 years. It's been a big topic. But for me, what resonates is we need to create places where people can do their best work and their mind is at its top capacity, because that's what we are bringing people to work to do, right? We're bringing people to work to show up and communicate and build amazing things and create amazing things. And in order to do that, and obviously this lens is very corporate. I think if you asked Lindsey this question, it would be different, but I'm going to give it from the Nicole perspective. In order to do that, they have to be seen as a full person, right? Like my whole career, I'll be honest, I did a good job I had walls, right? There were walls. There was me at home that would have never done a podcast with someone I went to college with. And then there was me at a workplace that was a different person, turned off my personal life, didn't share my own journey with people, thought that was what professionalism was, right? But the reality is I wasn't my best. I wasn't the smartest. I was anxious. I was, going too fast. Was Severance. I watched that show and almost had a mental breakdown watching Severance. I was like, oh, I can't watch this. And I was better. Like that's when I started being seen. I started getting promoted. I was happy with my work, right? And it's like even myself had to bring my whole self to work. And so I can see it in real time, but I also know it true of working in companies for as long as I have and seeing when employees come to work. When you feel like you don't have to hide parts of you. I mean, we still need to be professional, respectful, like, you can't bring all of the drama to work per se. But if you can be that full liberated self and bring even your flaws, your imperfections, maybe your neurodiversities, or all of those categories to work, your brain is free and your abilities are unlocked, right? And so that's the so what for corporate America, and that's the way I frame it because that's the environments I've been in, right? But that's the why, And for me, it's deeper because I care greatly about people, and I'm in this work because of how I think, the corporate world has on a human experience and what the good we can do in the world. So those are my own motives. But when we talk about like from a workplace standpoint, why it matters, that's what I think about.
Thank you. I'm sorry about typing in the middle of your talking, but haven't
No,
watched Severance.
we're used to it. That's
yeah.
how we operate. I love reading the comments and feeding into them. No, yeah, Severance, that messed me up, man.
Yeah.
When they were like, cut it off, I was like, oh, wow, that's too close to home.
Samaa, I'm going to go to you. Do you want to add anything to this question?
Yeah, that was really wonderful, Nicole. It just really the creating a workspace where the human spirit feels liberated. That's really
I can't
beautiful.
claim it. I'm definitely taking it from Robert Smith, so I will not.
Appreciate you.
Copyright to him.
I just appreciate you sharing that. I don't have a whole lot to add other than saying that complicating that a bit and saying that, depending on what identities you embody, that makes it is um, what you are, the fullness of whatever it is that you're bringing to your work environment may look a little bit different. But I think that thinking about context and the fullness of human experience when you create policies for the people that you're working with will help people approximate that, will help people come closer to feeling like they don't have to have a split life. And I also think it helps you figure out how to best support people in whatever their roles are. You can figure out what people's actual strengths are versus the you know, the bullet-listed job task list that they're supposed to be doing. So yeah, I think that's all I want to say about that, to add to that.
Perfect. Thank you. Noelle, do you want to add?
Yeah, so what I'll ask, I started my career in people operations and I loved it right away. But I started uh, leading recruiting and I really wanted to be able to help as many people as possible get into great roles. I learned that 70% of Americans hate their jobs. So I wanted to help people get into great jobs. And I did that work as a career coach for a while. And I realized that's not really what the issue is. The issue is that we have to make companies the kind of place that people want to work. So I transitioned and I started a DEI firm that centralized how to make organizations more psychologically safe. And I don't, we talk about psychological safety all the time, especially when we're thinking about humanities and putting humans first. I kind of see it more as a North Star than something that we can perfectly achieve. But being able to have that North Star in, I want people to feel like they can make mistakes without having their hand slapped, that we can put what's important to them in the forefront. And what I like a lot about Gainsight and what the values are here is you hear human first at least like 35 times a day. It's something that people take really, really seriously. And I align with that because what are some ways that we can put humans before everything else? And you can't always, right? Again, it's another North Star, but having that as the vision and having that in mind with everything that we do, where are we forgetting the people, especially with folks who have marginalized identities? Are they being left behind? And having that in my mind helps everybody, right? So especially if I can show other folks how to come along and do the same.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. I'm wondering if anyone has questions about any terminology, because we talk about psychological safety here at Maryland Humanities quite a bit. But if anyone has questions, just put it in the chat. If you want a quick definition, we can do it. Thank you, Noelle. I'm going to start with you now. This question goes to Noelle first. So much of HR work comes down to communication across different cultures, personalities, power dynamics, and lived experiences. The humanities train us to sit with complexity, listen closely, and resist easy answers. How has that kind of thinking shaped the ways you approach these conversations?
Yes. I am literally writing a book on this, how to have difficult conversations, because I love helping people do it, especially for folks who are people pleasers. I find that, especially in human first environments, telling people, sure, whatever you want, or trying to bury the lead with the problems that are happening because you just don't want people to be upset is just something that happens. But being able to be a communicator that understands that people have all different backgrounds, it means that you have to be willing to shift a little bit within yourself, and understand how to meet people where they are. So, like in some of my day-to-day work, when I'm meeting somebody new, I like to know, how do you best like to communicate? When I have direct reports, I like to know, how do you like to get your feedback? We can definitely take a look at things like cultures and some norms that we see and make assumptions. But I think it's having conversations and understanding what the individual needs. Because I love doing global work and I talk about having cross-cultural communications and ways that we can strengthen those. But even when you take a look at some of those norms, it just looks very different person to person. So making sure that I can help bridge those gaps as much as possible. And I'm getting to the individual. It really does make a difference in making people feel like they're really seen. So that's a core in, I think, the way that humans at work needs to be founded on.
I think, Noelle, I immediately am thinking about, because we don't have an HR department, I'm thinking about talking to my kids. And they come home from school, and like already my now 6-year-old is the golden rule, right? Treat
Mhm.
others the way you want to be treated. And I'm like, well, wait a
Yeah.
minute, little Axel, there's some nuance here. Treat
Right.
others the way they want to be treated is actually like a more, I think, aligned with what you're saying of just because this HR policy or the conversation, the way I want it to be led, makes sense to me, doesn't mean it would make sense or it would land well with whoever I'm talking to on the team.
Absolutely. Like for me, I love a good feedback sandwich. Like give me a compliment. What did I do great? Ice me up a little bit, right? And then tell me what the critical feedback is, and then where do we go from here? That's how I like to get feedback. There are a lot of people who can't stand that. Just give me what you need to tell me. So when I'm working with somebody and understanding that's their communication style, we're going to get along so much better. And I try to adapt that as much as I can. We can't always, but if I can have that in mind that this person's going to receive this information so much better, if I can adapt to their communication style, have a good understanding of what that looks like, I think that's for the best for everyone.
Yeah, and at Maryland Humanities, I'm not going to talk too much about what we do, but I will say we created individual communication style documents. So each person talks about how do you like to receive feedback? What's the best time of day that you're going to be in a meeting? You know, all of the things. Do you prefer an email? Do you prefer a Slack? Just to kind of like figure those things out. And I'll tell you, when I've had people fill those out, we wait a little bit. And when they fill them out, I'm like, oh my God, so much is unlocked. Now I know. It's like I get the cheat code for how to communicate with them.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Nicole.
you share
Oh,
oh, I'm going to start
no, no,
talking.
go ahead, Samaa.
I just want to say that you shared that with me, Lindsey, the what you have Maryland Humanities folks fill out, and it was really, I mean, it just revolutionized my thinking, not just about me, because I do think being in a leadership position, you do have to be really, so much of what we do is just about communication with all sorts of people, but just also about how the rest of the team is figuring out how to communicate with each other. So I just wanted to shout that out and thank you for that.
I agree,
And now,
Lindsay. I want to say Baker every time because that's how I call her.
Sure,
But
that's also my
being
name.
like I sometimes I'm inspired by you when I think about HR, and people look to me as being like a sounding board for thinking about the people. And sometimes I channel the conversations we have about like how you think. Now I think the challenges can be depending on the size of an organization or a team. Like I think leaders can take some of the concepts because if you have a team of 12 people, you know, it's doable, but then how do you operationalize that in an organization? And that's what we have to do, right? Like as HR, you've got to figure out how do you operationalize that in a way that keeps that authenticness and keeps that connection that you can make it meaningful. And scales it, right? Because I fantasize. I'm like, oh, if I'd had a career and I'd had the things I could have done with a small organization, you know? And I'm like, how do we do that? One thing at Gainsight that's been cool is the insights program that Noelle's team is running. And it's a similar way where you use an assessment and then kind of understand people's preferred communication styles, conflict styles, and things like that. And then on smaller teams, kind of doing that is really helpful and meaningful. And you know, I think we've got to continue to do that. And the most important time about bringing the human to work is using those even when it's stressful, even when the business is not thriving, even when it's a bad week or a stressful time or a hard deadline. How do you, when you're in fight or flight, ground yourself as a leader and partner with maybe a strategic partner, a confidant or something. So because that's when those things matter the most, right? Like that's when you don't do it because you're running fast. Oh, I can't get the guide. I forget how they want to communicate. I got it. And those are the most pivotal moments. You know, that's those touch points matter a lot. So anyway.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always think about DEI work as well as everyone's, not everyone, I guess not everyone. We know that in 2026, many people are for it until it's difficult, until it is applied to them, right? And so I think similar to what you're saying, Nicole, when you're in fight or flight as like an organizational leader, how is your reaction? Are you able to still hold the same values and make space for humanity as it shows up in HR that you wanted to when things were easy? And somehow you can probably speak to that because we're both our organizations have been doged, which apparently is not a word because I said it to somebody and they looked at me weirdly, but is a word in our lexicon now. So we've been fight or flight for a little over a year, pretty much. But you have anything to add, Samaa?
Um, no, you just said Doged, and my brain was just like, oh, yeah. Um,
Trigger warning.
yeah, yeah. No, I don't have anything to add.
That's perfect because we're starting with you next.
Great, great, great.
The next question is, and thank you everyone who's dropping questions in the chat. I'm going to get to those. We have a few we're going to get through, and then I'll start to incorporate yours. The next question is, history and cultural context shape how people show up at work. How do you factor that in when making decisions about hiring, retention, or workplace culture?
Uh, that's such a good question. So I always feel like hiring is the most exciting and riskiest thing that you do as a leader of an organization. I feel like it's you know, I don't um you know, I feel I've hired many people in my since I started as executive director, and each time it's just so thrilling. But then I'm also like, you have to think about workplace culture, you have to think about all those kinds of things. So um, one of the important things that we try to do when we're hiring folks is that we have we standardize all of our process, but we also talk internally, our little hiring team, we talk internally about, well, um, what are some of the things that we're going to be thinking about that aren't, you can't capture in a question. And most of that is about workplace culture. And so we talk about how we create like a hiring process that somehow says something about our workplace culture. We try to be really transparent about our workplace culture. Our culture is something that we really have worked hard on for some time, and we always try to keep tending to it. Um, and in terms of retention, I try to create policies that are broad enough that people can find their place in them, recognizing that we all have different nervous systems and that we all have different needs. So, thinking about just our PTO policy, our wellness, our whatever our wellness benefits are, and all those kinds of things. I At the end of this year, I'm going to do what in terms of retention, I'm going to do what I call like a I don't know what to call it, but why do you want to stay kind of survey,
Mm.
especially considering that we have been through the past year and a half has been rough. And, no matter how much we as leaders try to buffer the rest of the team from it, it trickles down and people are feeling it. We have to make concessions, we have to make sacrifices, and it has not been easy. And our whole staff has stuck together. The entire team has stuck together and are committed. Um, and so that's just made me curious about, well, what is it about this work that you all why do you want to stay here? And I hope to use that to help me figure out what other types of benefits we can offer that aren't necessarily about healthcare and these kinds of things. Um, Other things that we do when making decisions about hiring, we try to be real and transparent in our job descriptions and postings about all of the life experience, that it's not just about the degree that you have, and it's not just about, it's about you as a whole person. Um, we do a lot of work in our Department of Corrections, and so we try to make it clear that are not we don't do background checks, that we're not, we are interested and open to people who have all sorts of experiences with the criminal justice systems. um, we try to be clear and open about our commitment to accessibility. And so we just try to, in general, we're just trying to be to demonstrate on paper, and when we are meeting with folks who are interested in working with us, who we are and how we hope to entice the whole person to come work with us.
I wrote something in the chat. We all have different nervous systems. You said that, and I was like, yes, 100%. that is. That and the last part about what you said, I was like, this is exactly bringing the humanities to HR, of like the full human experience and how we apply our understanding of this full human experience to our HR policies and practices. I love that.
I love a lot of what's
actually.
I loved a lot of what Samaa said, but the one thing that I was like eagerly, I was like, I can help you hire. You shouldn't hate it that much. I can make it better. Like I wanted to come in and I mean, you have so many good points and you have so many good thoughts, and I'd love to bottle that up and then ease the hiring process for you, right? Because
Oh,
everything you're doing is amazing, and then that's why HR is a benefit to companies, right? It's because we can take like a leader's thoughts and the vision like you have or Lindsey has, and then systematize it so that then you can take the hard out of it and still have the soft. I don't know, that's how it came out. That's what it is. You can take the hard out of it and still keep the soft, but it's not soft. That's the real stuff, right? About hiring humans and making sure you find the right people to match. Now, not every company cannot do the background check thing. There's lots of reasons why different things will work for different places.
that's right. That's
But
right.
but if you can, take what a leader wants and what they're looking for and what they envision, and then make it so it's not so hard, because the hiring process can be super hard. And then retention becomes this big thing because the hiring process is so hard. And so you want to retain, even if it's maybe not aligned or
Mm-hmm.
thing. But I loved also what you said. Formerly in HR, we call those stay interviews, maybe
Thank you.
you should call them, why do you want to be here? I think that's the best way to do it. Why do you want to be here interview? Do that.
I knew there was a name, but I was like, I'm not going to remember the
It's
name.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all the nomenclature that's been in my ear for too long a time. But yeah, no, if you could unlock that, that would be cool.
Mm.
What I'd add to this conversation is data really does make a huge difference here. So if you have something like Glassdoor, Indeed, where people are sharing what the interview process is like for them, taking that information and it's like, oh, well, it's just one person. Yes, but if somebody felt excluded from the process because of something that your team is doing wrong, it's still worth addressing. The engagement surveys, and I worked with Lindsey on their engagement survey years ago. Really want to make sure that we're gathering the information that's important, but what are we doing with it? Or people feel like they're just filling something out and it goes into who knows, and nothing actually happens with it. And that's the thing that makes people feel like, okay, well, maybe they can't fix everything, but at least they're willing to listen to me. I see some of the shifts are happening, and my voice matters here. And I think that's one of the things that really does help people want to stick around. But I am a big fan of seeing where there are issues through spending time outside of my network and my own little bubble. When I used to work with helping veterans find work, I learned that there were people who would have a hard time doing video interviews because there's some kind of trigger with their PTSD with seeing themselves on camera. And that made me think, okay, well, what does that look like for accommodations for any kind of a business? Because this is like a one use case, and maybe not everybody has this challenge, but there are other things that may get into somebody's way when it comes to what their environment looks like. And it's just a lot of having conversations, seeing what people are saying, and extending yourself outside of where you normally spend time, and spending time in some other communities and hearing what's been really frustrating with them in the job market. So I know we can take a look at LinkedIn and see a lot of people ragging on HR, ragging on the hiring process, but I think it's important to listen to what people are saying, because there is some truth to it. And what are some of the things that we're doing that could leave people with that harm and leave a bad taste in their mouth for the organizations that we are supporting?
Mm.
Thank you, Noelle. When you're talking about data, I was thinking about something we actually started to do was send a Google form to every applicant and ask them about how the process went and what they thought. So
I love that.
our little effort at data. Okay, all right. I am going to take a question from the audience and share it here. Now I've lost the order. Nicole, I think it's you.
Okay.
Okay.
Live.
And then there's a question in the Q&A that I feel like is gonna like take us really into a rabbit hole. So I might ask it, and I'm sorry if that's your question, but I know this group well enough to know it would take us like way off course. So we'll see.
I have a feeling you should try it.
Okay, that's not this question. This question
Okay.
I think is pretty straightforward. We'll
Okay.
stay on course. And this question is, what is the biggest challenge you see in maintaining a respectful and inclusive company culture today?
Oh, the biggest obstacle to maintaining an inclusive and respectful company culture today. I think fear, because I think we're not our best selves when we're afraid. And fear comes in so many ways, right? And right now in our space, fear is coming from AI. I know it might not be in the humanities yet, but in the SaaS space, it is still in the fear of the humanities. In
Yeah.
the SaaS space, it's definitely coming, right? Like what is the software mean? How fast will it come? Will it outpace us? Or, will we still exist? What does it look like? What's the future of work? So we're afraid of that, right? Or we're afraid that we're not meeting what we're supposed to do, or we're afraid that no one's telling us that we have egg on our face and we're doing a bad job, or just so many fears, right? And whenever you're afraid, you're in fight or flight. And then you don't do the things you want to do. You don't do the things that when you're not in fight or flight and your amygdala is not hijacked, that you would, when better minds would prevail. And I also see when time gets stressed and you're, on deadlines, people have
Mhm.
treated me unwell, or they show up as not their best selves. And so you have to kind of remind people of that and be the mirror and say, is this really how we want to show up? Is this really what we want to do? Is this who we are?
Mhm.
Um, and so I think, and having to address that and being vulnerable in every space, right? So the fear is for the underrepresented in the corporate workforce or wherever we are, but it's also for everybody has fears, right? All that's the one uniting factor is we all are afraid of something. Whether people's impact on different things, I'm sure we could debate at length at some point. But um and so I think if we can address those and kind of unlock that and get more familiarity with each other and more comfort and kind of attach to where um and unlock some of that, then people become coachable, they become interested, they become um open to doing the things that will have people show up better, right? Like I'll see things where we make pay decisions out of fear of our top talent. And so we're maybe overpaying a top talent and people see it as favoritism or bias, right? But maybe it's really that's the person that you rely on the most to get the work done. And you're afraid if they're not here and happy, you won't be able to do what you need to do and you're in trouble, right? But then you're maybe not looking to other parts of the organization that are very impactful, but you're not as close with. And so it
Mhm.
comes off as something else. And it could be, I mean, people probably don't have their highest level of thinking, right? You go back to kind of your visceral thoughts when you're afraid.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think, you know, to maintain it, we have to create a place where we can unlock the fear of
Mhm.
failure, fear of what happens if, and
Mhm.
and doing the things even when we're scared. So
Mm.
that's what I think.
Here, here. Yeah.
So, Matt, I feel like we've
Yeah.
talked about this a lot lately.
We do talk about it a lot. Fear is the mind killer. Um,
It is.
I won't
I
get
like
into
that.
the
I think that's my new poster
that
board.
well, no, that's
Fear.
not me. That is from Dune. That is the Benny Gesserit post. That is a nerd thing.
Okay, sign me up.
Uh, I think the kiss, so right on, I agree with Nicole. I think in the nonprofit space, the kissing cousin to fear, I think, is urgency. I guess in the nonprofit space, that is specifically the humanities space. So I used to work in in victim services. There is urgency. That's different. But
Mm-hmm.
the work that there's an urgency that we create that we just feel like we have to be attending and attuned to it, and and I think that just leads to, I don't know, just leads to nervous systems, to fear, to all of these, when we don't, if we're not slowing down and trying to figure out, is this a timeline that we have? Is it a timeline that exists out there? Like, how can we create a timeline that works better with the people who we are right now in this moment? Um, I feel like I am regularly um, just navigating urgency um, among my team, but then also taking on urgency that's not mine and that's not ours at Maine Humanities. We're taking on someone else's, and then um, and when you're you've got that like urgency and fear cocktail. It's just hard to use discernment um, to think about the work you're doing, the partnerships you're making, you know, to check your values and the work that you're doing. So I feel like urgency is like a kissing cousin of fear.
Mm. I love that. I want to take that question and take it in a little bit of a different direction because when I think of some of the challenges I see with building an inclusive culture, it's doing it through our own perspective, right? So I do my work and I think first of my perspective of being a Black woman, of being a queer woman, like all those things are true to me. And I want to make sure that anyone that's in my identity is going to feel comfortable. Finding those things is easiest for me from my own lived experience. But what I need to feel included looks very different when I'm working at a global organization, or even if you're not at a global organization, regionally, it looks very different on what people need and what's going on in their own communities. So, or what disabilities they may have that you might not be aware of. So it really is, again, like looking outside of yourself and what some of the needs may be. I don't know what it's like to have certain physical disabilities. Is my workplace as accessible as it could be, or is there room for improvement? Because I know from doing research that only 40% of people who have a disability will share that. How do I get ahead of that? How do I make sure that people can feel like they can be themselves and they don't have to run into things that are going to make them feel like they have to wear a mask? And that takes a lot of work and building up enough trust. So I feel like trying to build trust can be one of those areas that can be really challenging, especially if we're focusing in on our own perspectives. I, I always want to make sure I'm being as respectful and inclusive as possible, but I'm always thinking with my own perspective and my own lived experience first. That's very natural. But taking that extra step can be really challenging. And I think that we can run into that when we're not careful.
Oh, that's great. That was great, Noel.
Thank you.
I knew she would take it and make it her own when she did that. I said, of course, that's Noelle's gonna perfect.
Thank you.
How cauliflower of you.
How cauliflower of you.
At the risk of going completely off the rails, we're gonna do the Q&A question, okay?
Okay,
But
dive in.
I'm gonna frame us because I want to make sure we get to the one about grace and care for yourselves, and you're not escaping it, okay?
It's my
So
least favorite question. Okay.
we're gonna go. Okay, I love that it's your least favorite. That completely tracks. So we are going to go into AI, and I'm gonna cut us off at 12:50 on this AI conversation if it's still going. All right, that's my framing. All right,
Oh,
and it could be nothing. Y'all could be like 2 sentences. This is it. But I've seen AI conversations in the humanities, and we talk a lot. Okay.
Okay.
Um, so the question is, what do you guys think about the rise of AI in relation to HR operations, particularly hiring, interviewing, onboarding practices? Is there a place for AI in these practices? I'm going to share it in the chat just in case, but it looks like Nicole's ready to go.
Well, it's
Do you
just
want
what we
to start?
think about and talk about all day, every day, all
I
day.
know.
I mean, if we ignore it, you're gonna miss the whole thing, right? Like, so it is all of it. We have to be at the forefront. We have to be thinking about it. Um, we were early experimenting, and I don't know if my team's still on here somewhere, but we were early experimenting with like, you had AI doing sourcing, and they were like having bots that actually called people and did the first call to be like, would you be interested in this job?
hmm.
And I do think that we're going to see more of that. And I talk to more people who have actually, they'll say, oh, I just had my first, call from a recruiter that was an agent. And I do think we're going to see more and more of that. There's no doubt in my own career and time at Gainsight that AI has made me exponentially more effective. I think it also means that I was having a conversation this morning with a leader that we're going to be expected to do more work, right? There's just going to be more that's going to pile on. And so it looks different. Now I forgot. I had a whole thought. What was the question again?
Yeah, and I put in the chat if that's helpful
Okay.
to everyone. But
Okay.
what do you
AI.
think about the rise of AI? Is there a place for AI in these practices? I mean, it
Oh,
sounds like It sounds like you're
yeah.
saying
I mean, I think if we don't implement it, we're not gonna keep pace, right? And two, we've got to be at the forefront. When Noelle interviewed with us before agents were even really at a thing, one of the questions I asked her was like, how do I get you involved in creating the agents? Now, we're not there yet, but like, I think that the humanities need to be involved in the creation, in the hiring, and the thinking about, because now more than ever, humanities matter, right? Like I've been reading my feed, or my wrong side of the internet has all been on Anthropic's hiring, and I hadn't seen it until like maybe a week ago, but they've been really intentional about their hiring. And it's not in the ways that I would have expected, seeing how successful and what their revenue's been. It's been in all the things that I would steward. Like I would have thought it's if I was just going off bias and how successful they are and kind of these things in my head, I would have gone, it's not net, but it's elitist. Maybe there's some stuff around pedigree, things like that. That's what I would have thought they anchored on. And it's the opposite of that. They want different thinkers, unconventional backgrounds. I'm sure there's background checks, but it's definitely not to the degree of what you typically think a state of the art, super high revenue, cutting edge, top of the SaaS world, AI frontier would be. And even still, they're successful and they're hiring in the ways that I would want even Maryland Humanities to anyone to hire, right? Like, and and so we need to bring the humanities to AI, because when the humans matter, our judgment, our ethics, our emotional intelligence, our ability to communicate clearly, to understand context and culture and nuance and global and all of those things, that's the whole point that's going to matter. The AI is going to do all the editing, make it pretty. It's going to connect all the dots. It's going to do all the logical thinking. It's, at speeds that our mind can't compute, but it can't be human.
Hmm. I think that when I think about AI and humanities, I understand that there's a lot of strong feelings, right? Um, but it is here. So what do you do with that? And I agree with Nicole. I think that you can't be behind. But one of the things that I did recently is I held a session focused on AI burnout, because we're a tech company, right? And so I wanted to create a space for people to talk about how they feel with this big push to learn as much as they can when it comes to AI, something that's constantly shifting and it feels overwhelming to be on top of. People are having conversations with their families that don't only dislike AI, they detest it. It's very strong conversations that they're having with people that they love. And that can be a huge area of stress. So I think that it's important to have the conversations of what is really difficult for people right now, and are they feeling burnt out, or are we an organization that's deciding to not use AI or slowly add AI, and it's making some people on our team feel frustrated because they feel like it's holding them back from where they want to be. That all those conversations are important, and we just want to make sure that we're holding enough space for it, and also making sure that there is that, like Nicole was saying, human aspect of the tools that we are using. I don't like the idea of having a AI do an interview. I think that's really uncomfortable. I think that causes issues, especially for folks who are neurodivergent. But I do see some tools that are out there that are really helpful for people with disabilities. And I'm seeing some of the things that are coming out that really can help change lives, that it makes such a big difference to employees. So I understand that it feels like a live wire, but if we can't have conversations about it, then we fall behind. And the push for it, we just need to make sure that we're thinking about the people who have to move forward, and that they don't feel like they can't handle what's coming up next. So we need to be able to be on top of things with the right speed, but keeping in mind that there are humans that are driving it, and they may not feel like they can catch up to everything that's being thrown at them.
And Noelle, I love what you said. And I think the other part I'd add to that is, how do we bring that into the creation so that
Hmm.
the inventions are cognizant of the neurodivergent, are cognizant of the different lived experiences of the globe, right? Like, how do we, because a lot of these things we talk about all the time at work every day is like, are created by a few people in one location that are working together as a super team. And then they only have the perspective of that group of people in that location. And it's in places you wouldn't think of. It's all over the world. But if that small group of people who think similar because they're from the same place doing the same thing creates it, what about the rest of the world? and
Right.
how will that experience be using it? And how do we insert humanities into the creation? I haven't cracked the code yet, to be transparent.
Yeah, well, I just dropped something in the chat. The way I described it, Dr. Knox, please forgive me if you watch this recording. Her work is phenomenal, but we do have a board member who's doing really, really creative work about training AI to reduce the harm to the Black children who use programs that utilize AI. And Dr. Knox comes with, all the humanities background. And so she's using that understanding of the humanities and of her degrees in education and her work in the field to train the AI that's being used for other things. So I just wanted to share that. It's a little bit of a side note, but it's, I knew AI would take us down a rabbit hole. Samaa, do you want to weigh in on AI? I'll
Yeah, uh, definitely not in terms of HR operations, primar for primarily, I mean, because we're a staff of 12 and we there isn't quite that need for our in our hiring process and the external facing. But yeah, we've been having these conversations about AI. I think the humanities field in general, academic humanities is in one place, but public humanities is, I think from what I've seen, there's like a varied degree of use, but there's not really folks talking about it. I see that also in like the funder space, because so internally, Maine Humanities, we've been having conversations, and about like, how do we engage with AI internally? How do we talk about any of that externally? What do we do when we're having grant applications and program applications and all these kinds of things? So, and I haven't really found any examples in the humanities world about policies. So what I do think and what I do know is that as Noelle and Nicole said, it is here. Like to pretend that it isn't here is foolish. And I think it behooves humanities organizations to figure out some sort of policy, some sort of use policy, not because it's inherently problematic, but just because there's just a lot of stuff out there. And if you don't have any kind of like, if you don't have any kind of grasp or understanding or anything, then it's just, then, yeah, you will get left behind. Or, even at Maine Humanities, when we try to talk about it, like, it's so clear that there's some of us who have no idea about anything. And so we don't even know, it's hard to talk about a thing when you don't even know the thing. You're just like talking about, you're like groping around in the dark and feeling this thing that you think is an elephant, but it's really a chicken. Like you don't know. Um, and so we have our sabbatical month coming up in July, and I'm gonna spend some of that time just like trying to learn more um, about different policies about use. I mean, we have people on staff who do use it. So many of us use it in intentional ways and unintentional ways. Anyway, I guess the moral of my story is I think public humanities is um, way behind in terms of articulating any kind of particular clear sense of how AI is being used or how folks in the humanities, public humanities want to use AI. I have heard and seen more conversations happening in the academic realm, in the academic humanities realm, you know.
I know that we're over time on this question. I just want to like tighten all of us up with like a nice little bow real
Put a
quick.
bow on
And
it.
I just wanted to share a little bit extra with saying that for advice for anybody who's leading in HR, this is the time for you to take a look at what is your hard red lines when it comes to AI. And that may shift over time. right? But you have to make a decision on how far you're willing to go, what makes you really uncomfortable, having conversations with the stakeholders about AI in your company and how it's being used in HR, how it's being used in people and culture, and what is something that you're not willing to do, or what is something that's going to be really hard for your organization to adapt to because of where they are right now. So having those conversations right now, if you're not ready to do anything with AI, then you need to be having the conversation as to why. And if you're not there yet, you have to be. So this is a time to make a decision and take next steps from there. But this is, I know we talked a little bit about like not having your head in the sand. If your head is in the sand, take it out immediately because you have to be able to make a decision now on what AI looks like in your department.
Awesomely
Yeah.
said.
I won't take these as a personal attack because you all were not on the all staff call last week when I was asked, are we going to develop an AI policy? And I was like, I do not want to discuss that today. Like,
It's coming. I know you're going to do it. It's going to have to happen. You'll do it.
we'll do it. But I was like, that's not a 5-minute conversation
No.
in the context of a full agenda. This is a rabbit hole. And we have varying at Maryland Humanities. We have some people who are anti-AI. They don't want to use it. They don't want anyone to use it. And then we have people who are very AI fluent.
That's
and
right.
so Samaa, we'll talk, right?
We'll talk.
As we develop.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm guessing Noelle's coming back. Yeah, there she is.
Yes. No, I have a ragdoll cat whose fur is everywhere and just got in my eye. So it wasn't a look. I didn't want you all to think I was winking at you.
I love it. Okay.
You dropped the
Last
mic
question.
and dropped off.
The last question is the one I was like, we're not escaping it. So we got 5 minutes. We're going to speed round it.
Okay.
It's too long for me to read, but I will read it. HR professionals and those in leadership are often the ones holding everyone's humanity at work, navigating grief, conflict, burnout, and big life moments, sometimes all in the same day. Humanities remind us that self-knowledge, reflection, and even rest are all a part of being human. How do you extend that same grace and care to yourself in a role that asks so much of you? And Nicole is not going to tell me again that HR professionals struggle with this. I'm going to hear what you all do. Let's start with Samaa. She just mentioned a month-long sabbatical, so
Yeah, I feel like this I had well, this is it's a process and a learning and a constant whatever, but I am good at laying all the way down. Um so I try to make sure that I am taking time to do that. I just have a lot of restorative practices that sometimes I also turn them into work, which is my own deep dark secret. But I have a lot of restorative practices and I try to be clear and transparent about that in among the team of folks I work with so that they can also take care of themselves. I also, when I'm yeah, so I'll say that. And I also try to remind myself that um I also try to tend to my boundaries. Like we talked in the beginning about bringing our full bring our full self to work. And for me, that I try to approximate that, but I also try to remember that I have to have some boundaries. Like, I don't need to tend to every single thing. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't need to. And that took some learning for me in the beginning when I first stepped into this role. And I regularly remind myself, and this is the truth in the nonprofit world, like our work is just, I mean, there are deadlines, yes, but it's just like this always. And so I just remind myself, like, you can like shut down your computer now and you can return to it because it will still be there. More than likely, it will still be there. So yeah, restorative practices, boundaries, and like, the knowledge that taking a break now it will still be there tomorrow, an hour from now. You can return to it.
and you'll be better at it, most likely.
Yes, usually I am.
Yeah. All right, Nicole, Noelle, let's hear from you all.
I want to compliment Nicole real quick because one of the things that I love of what she does is she's really transparent when it comes to her bandwidth. So she'll say, okay, I got a lot going on this at this time. Do we need to have this meeting? We have 3 meetings doing the same thing. Does it need to be that way? And I know so many leaders that will just keep running on the same machine that doesn't necessarily make sense because it seems so important to certain people, but she'll just call it out like such a kind way of, do we need to meet 3 times to talk about this same topic, or can we find a way to bring this in together? Or there's so much that's going on. We're gonna hold this off for this week. And you still feel like you get the care. Like, I still want to give attention to this issue, but right now I need to focus here. So that's been a good lesson for me. I am somebody who really, really struggles with rest. I'm taking a vacation in a month. I'm really excited about it, but I've never like taking like 5 days off in a row is something I don't do. And my manager is politely arguing with me as I'm like, I just want to bring my laptop with me just to do a little bit more work. And she's no. So we're working through it, but giving yourself permission to take the time that you need is important. And I'll pass it over to Nicole.
Noelle's so nice to me. I'm glad it's perceived that way because you never know what it's like. I do try to be intentional, but also trying to be real about what we can do. And the work is important, but how do you balance it all? I think HR is notoriously bad at, because we carry it all, and you want to keep showing it up and carrying it all, and you can't really bring your own emotion to that. Or at least when I was fragmenting my brain, I thought that for sure. There's someone on my team that often says, our mission is to be human first while winning a business while being human first. And they'll say, well, we're human first, everyone but ourselves. And so how that shows up in our ways is like we use heroics and that urgency piece that we've been talking about to bring it full circle. And what I've been trying to work with my team on is how much of this urgency are we manufacturing versus we're feeling from external sources. And there are things that are urgent, right? And we need to meet the demands of a business. Those are the realities. But how much are we complicating that? And how much are we being genuine about what is truly a priority and what we need to be intentional about and take the right amount of time? It's not perfect. And there are days that it over indexes in certain ways. And I don't always do a great job at that. But there's a point that my brain stops working. Like I can't think anymore, and you're like, I don't have a choice. Now it's not even my call. I just have to reset and so that I can come back and even do the basics. So I realize that when I do that, and then I realize when I rest, I come back and I'm so much smarter.
Yep.
I'm like, this is so obvious. This is so clear. This is so easy to accomplish now. My writing is clearer. Like everything is better. And so I accomplish so much more. So it's almost like counterintuitive that you think rest means I'm being lazy, or you think rest means that I'm not showing up and doing what I need to do. But it's quality over quantity, right? So that's something that I think about. So I'm not great at it. It's been a lifelong lesson. I definitely thought early in my career that the more I was visible, the more I did, the better I would go. It didn't turn out that way. So it took time for me to realize that it's the how, it's the what, it's the being intentional, it's showing up as your best. And it's been a journey that I use, with my teams. And it's nice to know, Noelle, that it lands that way. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, on that note, rest, boundaries, intentionality. I want to say thank you all for taking your lunch hour or whatever this lands in your day, how it lands, for spending your time with us. I want to thank our panelists. Thank you all. I'm big fans of all 3 of you for a variety of reasons. And I was really excited for this conversation. So I hope you all had a little bit of fun with me. Now I know what plant you all or what vegetable you all are. You don't know my secret of what vegetable I would be. So we're going to end this webinar now before I have to share that. But thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, my team, for the support. Bye, everybody.
Bye.